Yo, what is good, everybody? It is your boy. It's Golden Falls, Golden What Ifs, whatever you want to call me, you know? So, okay, we're back. This is part 3 of What If Deku Had a Minecraft Quirk. And I want to quickly say this. I'm currently in my apartment, obviously, and there's some loud noises, right, in the background. I think there's, like, construction or something like that, or, like, some sort of loud vacuum thing. I don't know. So if you hear anything go crazy and it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like something crazy, that's what that is. So I'm sorry. I was waiting for it to go away, but it like goes away for like 5 minutes and then comes back for like another couple minutes and then it keeps going off and on. So I was like, you know what? I need to record. So here I am recording, right? So yeah, nonetheless, if you hear that, then at least you know what it is and you're not like, what the hell is that? So with that said though, I want to get right into the what if. So let's get right into what if. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya is about to take on his biggest challenge yet, and that is not only partnering with Bakugo or Katsuki Bakugo, it is also taking on All Might. Now, let's make it very clear. Izuku has many things going for him. Strength, speed, utility, and so on. But dealing with someone like Bakugo, it might be a little bit difficult. Because this guy, he wants to do everything in his power to basically lose. Now, I know that sounds weird, because Bakugo's competitive. All he wants to do is win. But here's the thing. He wants to win so bad by himself that he basically will sabotage them to essentially, or, you know, somewhat lose. But Izuku, in his brain, what he's thinking is he's going to make sure they don't lose. He doesn't know how he's going to do it. You know, he is not sure exactly the way he should approach it or, you know, how he should figure it out, but he's not going to lose here. And he's going to make sure he doesn't lose. Now, he doesn't know if he can go head to head with All Might. He doesn't, right? He decides that at the very beginning of the fight, he spawns a bunch of iron golems to help him with All Might. Now, this is a little bit awkward because All Might is a good person. But when he's able to bait All Might into punching one of the Iron Golems, he's able to get the Iron Golems to start fighting him. Now, All Might's able to dismantle the Iron Golems pretty easily, right? It's nothing, no challenge, no big ordeal, but at least gives Izuku some time. And what he's thinking is, well, if I can't beat him, I have to go through the gate to escape. But the issue is trying to make Bakugo do that. Bakugo straight up doesn't listen, and he wants to fight All Might all out. So Izuku tries to help him fight All Might initially, flying around, and he's shooting his kind of like, you know, crossbow at All Might, and he's trying to do different things, but none of it is necessarily working. Izuku even gets to the point where he's forced into hand-to-hand combat, and he actually goes pretty decently well against All Might, especially with his strength potions, resistance, regenerations, and he even throws a weakness potion on All Might, and it seems to slow him down, right? So he's able to kind of keep up with All Might for the most part and even land some good blows. But here's the thing. He knows that he doesn't want to sit here and fight All Might. It doesn't make sense. It's not the most efficient way of going about things, and he's all about efficiency. And he's going to make sure that, well, Bakugo knows this. Because eventually Izuku would look and he would launch something into the air, throwing it as far as he can, but in a way or in the direction of the exit. As he throws this, he's fighting against All Might and also fighting with Bakugo, or at least sort of fighting with him, to the point where Izuku decides to kind of pull out a final little gambit. He begins insulting Bakugo, in which everybody's confused at what he's doing. Why is he insulting Bakugo? In which All Might's confused as well. Well, Bakugo would get so angry, so frustrated, that he would actually attack Izuku. And when he would attack Izuku, Izuku would grab him, and he would look to the exit as his Ender Pearl was going to land directly on the exit. It lands, and it teleports both him and Bakugo to the exit, and essentially they escape from All Might, or escape from the situation, or the scenario. Now, this is a bit of an interesting twist because everybody's like, whoa, we didn't know that he could do that. And Izuku kind of shrugs this off, saying there's a lot of things that he could do that, let's just say, haven't been talked about, told, or even dove into, right? He hasn't really shown everybody his entire skill set of capabilities. Izuku holds off on that, and everybody's kind of like in shock that they were able to technically beat All Might, right? They escaped, but they technically won the training session, which is pretty impressive. And on top of that, we even had a point where Izuku was going head to head with All Might, and it was kind of like interesting. Izuku was able to keep up for the most part and even do pretty damn well against All Might. And it's as if Izuku is like superhuman, almost to the point where he kind of is like All Might, right? In that way of being, well, superhuman, right? So they obviously passed the exam, and Bakugo, is a little bit annoyed because he wanted to, obviously fight against All Might. He wanted to like full on, brawl with him, and he believes in his head that they stood a chance and that he could have beaten All Might and blah blah blah. But Izuku says that that's not the most efficient way to approach things. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, he shouldn't do things that are stupid, right? Like, that's a dumb idea. In which Bakugo just ignores him, and then eventually would act like he's gonna hit him, and he's get all angry, and all angry Pomeranian things, all that stuff. This is when everybody's tests would finally be over. Some would pass, some would fail, stuff like that, right? It's all, in between. Some people do really good, some people do really bad, some people do average and just squeak on by and stuff like that. But nonetheless, everybody is gonna go to the forest training camp. Just some people will have to do extra bit of studying and an extra bit of, kind of learning and work overall. Now, as they head over to the forest training camp the very next day, as they're all packed and ready to go, they actually meet the Wild Pussycats, in which when they meet them, well, let's just say the training session is going to begin right now, because they are shoved off a cliff and sent down into the forest, and they're forced to literally fight a bunch of these, like, monsters. These, like, ground-made, earth-made, like, monsters, and they're forced to fight them all. Now, Izuku kind of just glides around, and he can easily defeat monsters like this. Like, he is strong enough to do so just in raw power. He flies around with his elytra, just smashing into them and punching them and slicing them with his sword, or even shooting them with his firework arrows, and he's basically exploding them. And it's pretty basic for him. Maybe even dropping a couple iron golems to help out where they can and stuff like that, right? He does, for the most part, his best to help his classmates out, and eventually they would get through the entirety of the forest, leading them to the actual camp. Now, the camp is a little bit interesting, because Izuku would run into someone by the name of Koda, who would immediately punch him in the nether regions. Not a very nice thing to do, but is something that Koda did do, in which Izuku would be, wincing in pain, but this would then lead them to obviously doing their normal training, right? This training would involve everything that Aizawa believes they need to work on. Now, Izuku is a little bit interesting because there's a lot of stuff that Izuku could work on, but is a lot of unknown things, right? Like, Izuku doesn't know a ton, or a lot of people don't know a ton about Izuku's quirk, and it kind of goes for Izuku as well. Izuku does lack at least a lot of knowledge on his quirk, but he begins to use this time to kind of accelerate the process, look through his quirk, what he can use, what he can do, and so on. Like, he really starts digging into his quirk, and he begins to think to himself, what can he personally use, and how can he change things that are normally one way and make them another? And then he thinks to himself, oh my god, or oh my goodness, I need to immediately get on some sort of tablet, laptop, computer, something, in which they actually do have one there. Not the best reception and stuff like that, the best internet, but he does check it out, and he begins tampering with some things and begins working with some things and begins changing some things. And as he does this, he begins to learn more and more about his quirk and the certain things he could possibly do with it, and some of these things are pretty insane. And the main thing he's thinking about is what he can do about some of these mobs. Some are friendly, some are hostile, some are neutral, Now, how can he change them and how can he utilize them? That's something that he wants to think about and something he really wants to learn. And it's something that he uses or tries to figure out during this training session. Obviously, this would lead to the invasion of the villains on the training camp. Now, this training camp invasion would be more insinuated towards trying to find and defeat All Might. Because, well, there's really no point in kidnapping Bakugo. I mean, yes, there is kind of a feistiness to him and an anger to him, but Izuku beat him pretty handedly, and there wasn't any, like, overarching tantrum in front of everybody. Izuku beating him kind of humbled Bakugo just a little bit, and, well, you know, you gotta deal with what you gotta deal with, and everybody, they kind of think, they're thinking to themselves, they mostly want to get their hands on All Might, but also they'd settle for their hands on Izuku Midoriya. And Izuku would think to himself when all this is occurring that if they want him, well, they can have him. Because this is a pretty damn big mistake if they decide to actually do what they're thinking about doing. So Izuku, well, he decides that when all this is said and done and they grab him and they try to take him away, he doesn't fight back. He doesn't try to get away. He doesn't try to save himself. He lets himself get captured, and when he's there and he's in the League of Villains, and when All For One would show his face, or lack of face, when he would show up once again, well, they would be standing in front of Izuku Midoriya telling him that he's going to help them or else. Now, Izuku, on the other hand, has plans of his own. Plans that, let's just say, the villains are not ready for. Because they're thinking, well, he can only do basic things, right? He summoned a couple things, but those things were easy peasy, right? All For One's here. We got a couple no-moves. I mean, there's no problems at all. There should be no issues. In which Izuku, well, he thinks quite the opposite. Izuku thinks that this right here was their biggest mistake they could possibly make, especially after some of the things he learned, which is a scary thought that Izuku could get even stronger, or that Izuku could learn things even more that could benefit him in the near future, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Izuku sits there, and they're all thinking, oh, well, you know, he can't do anything, right? He's cuffed, you know, he can't use his quirk, and so on, but they're so wrong. They are so wrong to think that he can't use his quirk because of some simple, very simple kind of machinery, right? Izuku would quickly make it very known that this would not matter, and he would begin to show what he's capable of, and he begins to spawn things around him that normally he wouldn't spawn, but he decides that this is going to be the perfect time to do so and try out what he's been trying out. He spawns some regular mobs in terms of hostile mobs that are regular in terms of skeletons, spiders, creepers, right? And as these things are spawning, everybody is freaking out. Like, what the heck is this Halloween fest? As the creepers would begin to explode the building. But actually, it's a controlled explosion. And these explosions are away from Izuku. It seems like the skeletons and zombies and stuff like that, they're actually not hurting Izuku. It's as if they're under his control, or at least to a certain extent, friendly toward him. Now, they would go out of their way and basically be killed, but, I mean, they're kind of already dead. They are the undead. But they're basically killed for the most part, but they leave a giant hole in this League of Villains kind of base. And when it's destroyed, or partially destroyed for the most part, Izuku looks for an opening for himself. He would jump out of the hole that is made, and he would begin to send a signal, creating a beacon of some sorts and channeling it straight up into the sky, pointing them in the right direction. And now All For One knows that this right here will now be the battleground for their final battle between him and All Might because of what this kid just did. But he will also have to be dealing with Izuku, because Izuku is not giving a single inch. And All For One doesn't realize that he's going to need even more backup, because Izuku spawns a creature that would terrify everybody around, even the heroes that are arriving. This creature would walk toward All For One, 3 heads and all, and it would begin charging up an explosion. It would explode in the League of Villains base. It's incinerating the base itself, and it begins flying toward Izuku, but Izuku would hop on its back and it would begin flying around. Izuku would fly around with it as it shoots basically its own head's projections and landing little explosions, and these little explosions would give something known as the Wither effect. And this right here would be known as the Wither. He would be literally flying around on the Wither, and Izuku would be shooting these kind of explosions at All For One, and shooting crossbow arrows and explosions as well, and even shooting them at the League of Villains and subduing them for the most part. All For One sees that All Might is now here, and All Might begins fighting All For One as well. All For One is obviously on the back foot and obviously under massive pressure, and he believes that there is really no way out of this. So what does he do? Well, he decides that he's going to send away Shigaraki so that he can have that final gambit, so he can have that final kind of way of surviving, right? He needs Shigaraki to survive. So he sends Shigaraki off, but he's the only one that gets sent off. Everybody else is swooped up, captured, all the League of Villains members unable to leave. And that's mainly because All For One was unable to maintain his focus with his entourage that is just pursuing and attacking him. Izuku continues his onslaughts over and over and over again. So much so that All For One is just overwhelmed, and Izuku begins to actually just throw potions at him to the point where all these potions stack up. The poisons, the weaknesses, the slowness, all of these things stack up, and all of these things wear on All For One to the point where All Might can finish him off with one United States of Smash, and he really doesn't even take that much damage. The League of Villains are all swooped up except for Shigaraki being sent away, but it seems like there's a final idea that Shigaraki has in mind, at least for the moment. Now, he's going to have to find a couple more people, or at least try and save a couple more of these villains, so that, you know, he can continue on with what his plans are going to be in the future. But for now, Izuku is kind of pushed away from all that, and he now would then head back to go to, well, UA High School, but they're actually going to utilize dorms. Now, this is when they actually ask Izuku for some assistance, because these dorms would take quite a while and cost a lot of money. And Izuku decides that, hey, why not? He'll do that. And he decides to help them actually create dorms that are super spacious, super nice, and like completely amazing. Even revamping some of the training facilities just with the mass amount of materials that he can actually give them. Now, that would help and benefit everybody, of course. But this would not be the end of whatever's going on at this moment, because they all would be sent back to UA. They would all be put back in dorms, or all be put into dorms. And now it is time for massive amounts of training. Izuku has shown that his level continues to rise, right? His skill level. And on top of that, and you talk about a one-on-one brawling fighter, someone that could go basically hand to hand, or, you know, sword to sword, whatever you want to call it, or fighting one person on 1 versus 1, he could definitely do that with his armor, with his resistance, with his with his skill, with the potions and so on. He could really do all of that, and he's able to kind of do all that, and on top of that, he's able to actually utilize monsters, creatures, summonings, basically. And Izuku shows that there really is no limit to what he can really do. And when they go on to actually get their provisional hero license, it's a totally different kind of ball game, because Izuku would be there, and all these people think that they know what Class 1A can do, what Class 1A does, and how and what kind of weaknesses they have. But what they don't know is how much better they have gotten, because when Izuku starts showing off what he can do, how fast he really is, how strong he really is, the summons that he can create, and basically the ability to utilize different things, well, they all begin to crumble. And when the first event begins and they have the little dodgeball, you got to tag people or tag the lights off the people, everybody around Izuku, well, let's just say in Class 1A, they pass almost instantly. Because all these people that think that they can really, fight Izuku and take them on, they don't stand an absolute chance. Especially if Izuku starts whipping out some of the other creatures that he could truly utilize. For now, he's using some of the basic ones. Like he can use some wolves, or maybe he could use some iron golems. But if he wanted to get real sinister, he could start using some skeletons, some skeletons with armor, maybe some spiders and other creepers, because let's be honest, these people aren't going to know how to deal with them, and frankly, they'd be terrifying in real life as well, so they would be absolutely terrified when trying to fight these creatures. But Izuku and a lot of other people would pass pretty early on, heading on to the next round. Now, all of Class 1A would pass, and this would lead them to that next round, which would be more of a rescue-like portion. Now, this is perfect for Izuku, right? Izuku has a full kit of healing abilities. He can literally heal people, and on top of that, he can fly around scouting for them with his elytra. And then on top of that, he could literally use his blocks and other things and to help with structures, holding them up so people can get out, and creating a home base that is literally perfect and protected. And on top of that, he's able to literally help as many people as possible in a very short amount of time. Healing potions, levitation potions, resistance, anything you can think of, he can do it. He can do it all. And he's able to, be a really strong support hero. And that's the reality of it. Izuku is a extremely strong support hero. And he shows that off during this provisional hero license exam. And he shows it off immensely. Now, this support hero tactic thing, yes, it's awesome that he's a very great support hero. But what else can he do? Well, when the villains or the fake villains begin to arrive with Gang Orca, well, he shows off what he can really do in an actual fight. Now, let's make this clear. The whole All For One incident wasn't fully televised. I mean, you can't catch everything, and not many people know Izuku was too involved. They just know he was captured. So when Izuku begins to kind of, I wouldn't say eliminate, because that's kind of killing, but knocking out a large portion of Gang Orca's kind of fighting units very quickly, it's a bit of a surprise, especially when he flies around dropping potions upon potions, weakening and softening up all the villains that are there, leading to Todoroki and Inasa to shoot a gust of wind and fire at them. But here's the thing. They kind of counteract each other. They're not working together. They're kind of messing each other up. And Izuku would be flying around looking at this, thinking that this is absolutely ridiculous. Genuinely ridiculous. He's about to do something and about to actually basically unleash some more creatures that could help him out. Or fortunately enough, with one scream at them by Izuku, and Izuku yelling at them, telling them to stop messing this up, they would finally listen, and they would basically blow away all of the other villains and also entrap Gang Orca in a wind-fire vortex. As they are trapped in there, or as he is trapped in there, Izuku makes sure that he actually can't be replenished and cannot get out of that vortex. Eventually, the timer and the bells or the alarms would begin ringing, and it would be officially over. The provisional hero license is now done. And let's just say Izuku got borderline a perfect score, doing absolutely everything and absolutely anything at a very, very, very high level. Izuku would benefit from this majorly, especially because many heroes and agencies alike would see this and think that he is a great addition and would be a fantastic addition in almost every single aspect, right? Not just because he can create a bunch of resources and do this or do that and be a great support hero. He could be a top tier hero, like an actual action hero. So they begin to actually kind of bolster his stock up even more throughout this time. And eventually they would head back to UA, continue with a little bit of their training, and then begin speaking about something known as a work study. A work study will basically get you really in the door with how it feels to be in an agency and how it works. And, well, Mirio, Nejire, and Tamaki try to explain these things. Tamaki kind of is too shy to do so. Nejire, well, gets distracted too easily. But then Mirio decides, well, how about they just fight him then? That's the best way to go. That's the best way to do it. That they should just all fight him. In which, that's exactly what happens. All of Class 1A. Every single one of them, except for Izuku. And Aizawa makes it a very, very strong point that the kid is not going to fight him, because it's going to basically get rid of the lesson that is being made. In which Izuku says that I mean, if his quirk and his power is strong enough that he could defeat him, or that Mirio could possibly defeat him, but of course Aizawa tells him that he knows the kid. He'll get knocked down. He'll figure out how it works, and then he'll beat him. And then it'll all be bad because the whole statement that is trying to be made will be skewered. So he tells Izuku to sit down and just watch. That he's in trouble and that he's not allowed to do this because he fought, well, in that giant battle. In which Izuku looks at him and then kind of just shakes his head and shrugs his shoulders. As, well, there's nothing really he can do, or he's probably going to get the snot beat out of him by Aizawa. So he just watches as his whole class is absolutely dismantled. And as he's watching this, he does realize that in terms of power, yes, Mirio is fantastic. He's super strong. But in terms of resistance, Izuku can resist a lot of these things until he figures out how his quirk would work. In which it seems like Aizawa was right and probably made the better call. Now, while Izuku is being patient and waiting, he does get some good news after all this is said and done, because Mirio would even approach him saying that actually Sir Night-Eye wants to speak with him as soon as possible, and frankly he's really excited to hopefully work alongside him. In which Izuku will be shocked to hear this. You're telling me one of the top heroes is excited to work with me? In which Mirio nods his head, says yeah, he thinks that you do efficient, cutthroat work, and on top of that you bring so much more to the table than almost every single maybe active hero out there at the moment, which is kind of an interesting statement to think about, but that's the truth of it. He brings a lot to the table and he adds so much to any agency, and Izuku would then decide to work with Sir Night-Eye, of course, and work on what's coming next, which would be the kind of stopping of Overhaul and the Shia Hazaikai. They would have their introductions. They would speak to each other about what they expect from the agency, how they want to approach things, and who they're after, and that they're after Overhaul and the Shia Hazaikai, of course, and that they need to basically form a plan to find him. And of course, Izuku would agree to this and say that there's no issues, no problems, and that he is completely up to do this. And of course, Sir Night-Eye is happy to hear this because, well, they could use all the help they could possibly get, because it's been a while and they still have not found the guy. So they begin patrolling, they begin looking, they begin helping. But what they didn't expect is that Mirio and Izuku would go on one patrol, and that one patrol would take them right in front of the man they've been looking for and the man they've been hunting to stop for a long, long time. Overhaul, the leader of the Shia Hazaikai, is right in front of Izuku Midoriya and also Mirio Togata. But that is where we're going to end this part of What If Deku Had a Minecraft Quirk. And that's going to have to be saved for part 4. And yeah, not sure if part 4 is going to be the last part. Maybe we're going to have a part 5. Not sure yet. I try to keep these things from about 4 to 5 parts just for my own mental sanity, you know. Yeah, I mean, you guys understand. I mean, if I go like 11 parts on one of these videos, for one, by part 6, nobody's watching the video. I'm just saying, that's the reality of it. We're gonna have like very little viewership, which is fine. I don't care, but that's the reality of it, right? Honestly, it would be better if I was just doing one-shot movies all the time, but maybe we'll do that toward the end of the year, maybe like November or December. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a special month, but that would be the most efficient way to do it in terms of viewership. But of course, in terms of enjoyability, I know a lot of you guys do love the parted series and the consistent uploads. With that said, though, I'll stop yapping. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope all you guys have an amazing day. Later.